everybody, and thank you so much for joining us for this session. We're going to get started right on time because we have so much to talk about today and so little time to do it. But thank you so much for joining us for this panel discussion on designing information systems with health and supply chain end users. My name is Emily Sheldon. I'm an implementing partner and representative of the UNICEF Startup Lab based in Accra, Ghana. Our UNICEF Startup Lab was started in October of 2019 to better connect innovation and entrepreneurship into the work that's being done by international organizations, NGOs, and partners every day. And I'm so excited to join such an esteemed panel of expertise today to share more information with you about how you can better design information systems and learn from work that's already being done all across the world. To begin, I'm going to give some quick introductions of the panelists we have joining us today. They will then each give a short presentation, and at the end, we'll have time for questions and answers. So please stay with us throughout this hour. If you have any questions, please type them in the chat box, and at the end of the session, we'll be happy to facilitate and share those questions with our panel of experts so that they can answer them live. And let's get started. So today we're actually joined by 5 different panelists from all across the world, the beauty of having a virtual conference. First, we're joined by Philip Lule and Adolphe Antwi. They are from the Logistics Management and Info Systems area of IT. They're based in Accra, Ghana, and they're going to share some more information with you. Philip has over 20 years of experience working in everything from project management, systems integration, organizational performance, and they're really going to talk about these LMIS systems and share more in that area. After Philip and Adolphe, we'll be joined by Deo Kimera. He's the Ghana Country Director for Chemonics International, leading the USAID Global Health Supply Chain Project and the Procurement and Supply Management Program. He's worked in Botswana and Tanzania. He's currently located in Ghana. Also, over 20 years of experience. We're bringing a lot of expertise to you today. Next, we have Leah McManus. Leah is currently the project lead for the HRH 2030 Indonesia project, but she also provides technical assistance to all countries that are currently implementing the HRH 2030 program. Leah focuses on supporting local stakeholders to build out sustainable and interoperable systems, and she's going to talk to you a lot about the health workforce specifically today. And finally, we're joined by Gladys Muhiri. Gladys is the supply chain technical advisor for the Central Africa region for Catholic Relief Services. She's a pharmacist with over 15 years of experience and has technical expertise and capacity building support for implementation of supply chain activities. She's currently working on the Malaria Global Fund project in both Nigeria and the Republic of Congo. Once again, this is such a diverse panel. If I told you all of their bios and backgrounds, we would be here all day. So I'm going to stop there. They have a lot more experience than that, and each of them will briefly introduce themselves, their work, whether they're with Chemonics or Catholic Relief Services, as they share their information and we go. Like I said, for anybody who just joined us, please feel free to introduce yourself in the chat. Also include any questions there, and when we conclude the presentations, we'll come back to do live Q&A. Thanks so much for joining us, and let's invite Philip and Adolphe to get us started. Gentlemen, are you ready?
I think you're on mute, Philip.
Oh, I was on mute. Thanks, Emily. Thanks so much for introducing us, and thanks for everybody for joining us. And I'll be doing most of the presentation. My colleague Adolphe is currently having some technical challenges in joining, but he will be available for any questions and answers. As Emily introduced a litany of our expertise, I'll just talk about where I'm working at the moment is Chemonics and implementing a logistics management information system in Ghana. So we thought this is an opportunity to leverage how digital development, the principles of digital development are used in developing solutions, specifically in our development arena. But most importantly, looking at how we take it from the abstract component and look in how did we successfully use them and generated successful results in Ghana. So I'll be talking about the principles, pick one of them and talk about the results of how we leveraged that to get the results. So Leah, if you don't mind, if we can get the next slide, please. So what are they? Principles of digital development, they've been in existence for a period of time, and everybody wonders, some people know what they are, but I'll talk quickly on what are they. They're similar to all those who have been participating in software engineering and also project management. It's a guidance. It's basically a fusion of the two, but for the development world to guide on how we can implement systems in areas like in the development sector. They guide in every phase of implementation from the initiation all the way to sustainability of solutions. And also they provide guidance on how we can implement everything that we need to do going forward. And next, and who uses the principles of digital development? They are quite used by everybody, and you can look at different spectrums, whether it's local partners, whether it's international organizations, and I think there's a recommendation now taking them to beyond just the development world to any other integration of system implementation that happens in the world, whether you're doing a out of cost solution, the commercial shelf solutions, or you're dealing with open source solutions, they can guide you in achieving what you need. Next. So another question is where are they applied? I think if you look at it, possibly some of the participants joining us today may have used this before, but if you look at since probably around 2009, they've become so common and being applied everywhere in most of the development world where we do the implementation of systems. Next. So when did they come into existence? As I said, UNICEF started with the innovation principles of 2009, and 2010 was joined by Green Tree, and then after that, most of the development partners got together and they developed 9 principles that we can use in guiding development of solutions in our development world. Next, please. So the bigger question is here, why? Someone can ask me, well, we already have software engineering practices, we always have project management practices. Why did we develop something that is different to be used in the development sector? The reason for that was possibly experience for some of our participants here is that when we were working in different sectors, especially in the development world, there are different challenges that are unique to the work we do in terms of implementing solutions. So that expertise was fused together to develop a tool set that can help us in implementing any ICT initiative in international development. Those, what happened out of that, we came up with 9 principles that guide the development. And I'm going to talk through the 9, but specifically I'll focus on one as an example of what we used in Ghana and how it yielded the results. Next slide, please. So what are they? As I said, there are 9 principles, and they all embed into one critical thing. They involve a user in designing solution. But at the same time, they ensure that everything that we develop or we design and implement into the work areas in the workplaces we're doing the work, that yields results that can achieve sustainable objectives. So they start from involving the user in designing, and then they go ahead to also taking into appreciating the ecosystem that we are working in, then looking at how we can design systems for scale. So we never design system just to work in one area, but we look at how we can scale systems. We build sustainability. They are really data-driven. They guide you to ensure that your system is data-driven and data can support the informed decisions. They leverage open standards. You've had a lot of open source systems now available that support all the health sector we're working in. They emphasize reuse and improvement, at the same time addressing privacy and security, and they emphasize collaborative between stakeholders and even different implementers. So these are the key 9 principles that guide our implementation for most of the development work we do. But in Ghana, we picked on, today we used all the 9, but today for our presentation for the panel, we're gonna focus on one where we worked on designing with the user and what the results were for designing with the user. So let's go to the next slide, please. So for each individual principle, there are 4 key areas. As any software implementation, we look at from analysis, design, development, deploy, and implement, and measure, and evaluate. For the specific design with a user principle and considers a user as a key participant in all these key phases, from analysis of the system by understanding the business processes and developing the requirements, and also setting expectations from the kickoff of the project all the way to the last implementation timeline. When it comes to the design and development, the principles emphasize that the users should be involved in the configuration of the system, the prototyping, in the incremental builds, and also in the testing of the solution. When we get to the deployment and implementation, it emphasizes that the user must participate in the knowledge transfer and training of the end users. Then, of course, eventually, in terms of our measuring and evaluating the performance of the project implementation and post-implementation, we ensure that the key performance indicators and also the success measures are made and contributed to by the end users. So this is the key and what the digital development phase of design with the user requires. But how did we do that in Ghana? Next slide, please. So in Ghana, we leveraged this particular phase of designing with the user in the logistics management information system. So we got all multiple users and stakeholders from different areas. We started all the way from the top level to the last mile. So every person who was involved in the whole supply chain tiers was involved in terms of developing the system. The next thing we did was to ensure that there were no system features imposed on the end users. The end users came with the suggestions of what they wanted to see. They came with the processes that they wanted to improve, and also they came with the processes that wanted to be redesigned. So what we're bringing on board were technology as an enabler, or technology to support the optimization of the business processes, as opposed to technology imposing how the processes are supposed to be working. Next, please. Beyond that, in Ghana, we did a comprehensive supply chain solution, which starts all the way from demand demand sensing, all the way to the consumption capture and report and analytics. For each individual module, order management, warehouse management, inventory management, and all other modules, the users were involved. They worked together with us incrementally and iteratively to ensure that every prototype we developed, they validated it before we went into the design and configuration. Next, please. What was the result of that? A solution that we managed to develop and implement in the country addressed the specific context and behaviors of what the end users wanted. So we did not come up with something new, much as we bought a core solution that we configured to meet the end users' needs, but it reflected exactly how the processes are working. The only difference we did were the introduction of the best practices, industry best practices, and also the new processes that resulted into the optimization. Because the end users were involved from the inception phase, it helped us in terms of system uptake. It was very easy for leaders to accept the system and utilize it, that the uptake was very, very fast when we rolled out the system. There are key tenets we took out of this. Next, please. And this come from that when you're designing a system, especially with the users, you focus on the system champions. In Ghana, we selected 150 people representing all the tiers of the value chain, as I said, from the key stakeholders at the ministry level, all the way to the person capturing consumption at the health center and the community level. These were the key champions we identified, and they participated in designing the system, in developing the business requirements to ensure that every end user needs were met. The system is end user centric. That because it's based on the actual needs of the user and reflects the business processes from the inception again all the way to the end. That we did not recreate anything. We just optimized what existed. We looked at this, we found that it was very beneficial every time when the end users were given a chance to introduce and also look at the optimization of opportunities. It gave us a chance to be able to design something that addresses the needs and also ensure quick uptake and also efficient optimization of the existing processes. Next, please. So what does that teach us? Again, as I said, the abstract component talks about the digital aspect of end user design, but the implementation component, we realized that there are 6 things that we managed to get out of the leveraging of the digital principle of end user in our implementation. 1, when the users participated in our in the design of the system, we managed to identify the needs from the business need development all the way to what they wanted to see in terms of system functionality. We work together with the users to understand their current processes. We work together with the end users to embed what they needed to be in the future, but at the same time applying the industry best practices and ensuring optimization of what we're doing. Based on all that information gathered, we managed to configure the solution, and then again, we brought it back. As I said, we're doing it incrementally. We brought it back to the end users to ensure that they validate every prototype before we move forward. As I said, also, the end users were very much involved in designing the knowledge transfer and capacity development of the implementation phase of the system. Reason being that they understood the training needs of their peers. They also understood the challenges, and their contribution to that made our design of the end user training and also capacity transfer strategy much more effective. So at the end of the day, all the project outcomes and the KPIs that came out of the project and implementing it were measurable and managed to give us a successful implementation. Right now, we have actually achieved quite a lot in a short period of time, and we base that on the user participation in the system. Next slide, please. So I talked about end user, but as at the beginning, I was talking about the 9 principles of digital development. They all have a lot of benefits and opportunities if you leverage them in the work you do. Some of the benefits are, as in my last slides explained, we design for purpose. End user involvement and early buy-in helps a lot. Negates a lot of issues and problems, because then you're not bringing something strange to the end user. They're already aware of what is coming to them. Understanding the ecosystem is very important, because there is normally a challenge we get imposing systems that may not work in the areas where we are implementing different activities. Basically, we can't take a system from Southern Sudan and put it in Ghana, or Ghana or the other way around. You need to understand the ecosystem, and the principles of digital development guide you on how you can do that landscape evaluation. Open source, the ability to reuse is encouraged, and that's another benefit of the digital development. From an opportunity point of view, as I said, in-country expertise for solution sustainability is very, very good as well. Also, in terms of developing solutions that meet the development world standards. One key thing in terms of the opportunity of using the digital development, the principles of digital development, is you align development of a solution to individual country needs and also the vision of a country. What we've done in Ghana right now, we are leveraging different technologies like machine learning, predictive and prescriptive analysis that's going to help us in terms of identifying how we can do our data analytics to inform decisions, thereby optimizing the objective of our supply chain. So really, that's a summary of why we have leveraged the principles of digital development in designing our system. And I'll just hand over to the country director, Dio Kimera, to talk about the collaboration and how we have leveraged collaboration as one of the best working practices in ensuring success in Ghana. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Philip. As introduced, I'm the country director for the Global Health Supply Chain Program, Procurement and Supply Management, and also providing supervision to the Global Fund Chemonics project, where the Ghana Integrated Logistics Management Information System is funded. Performance of the supply chain today is greatly influenced by the quality of data and information available to key actors. And since key actors are many, therefore the necessity for a collaborative strategy. But establishing collaboration among key stakeholders is not a once-off event. It's a process that requires engagement and intentional engagement of all key actors towards a common goal. Therefore, under the Ghana Integrated Logistics Management Project, this process started with the identification of key stakeholders to collaborate in the development of the business case and key objectives of the system. And it was extended to identification of collaborative constraints, risks, mitigation, in addition to ensuring that right at inception of the project, we established system champions that formed a community of practice to share system development ideas and best practices. Within this framework, we also included setting up feedback mechanisms so that issues that arise and those that we already knew would be put forward and discussed, and improvement strategies designed. The platform that was established under this collaborative strategy also acted as a basis for sharing best practices and lessons learned from multiple stakeholders, and also sharing them with other countries. Next slide. Key stakeholders, as you might have noticed in your various work environments, key stakeholders are not homogeneous. They are quite different and have different interests. Therefore, there is a need for categorization and tailoring key messages that suit the respective group or groups of interest. And the scope and objective of the project that you are implementing greatly influences how many subgroups you will establish, and the size of each of those subgroups. Therefore, realizing that in Ghana, what we did, we categorized our stakeholders in groups that had common interest. At central level, we had two groups. We had the leadership, which included key stakeholders from Ministry of Health, Ghana Health Services, National Health Insurance, Christian Health Association Organization, Foods and Drug Authority, and many others. And the role of these stakeholders was to make sure that the vision is well outlined and aligned with the objective of the project, make sure they provide project governance, support change management as and when needed, effective resource utilization, and all aspects relating to policy development and monitoring. Then at also central level, there was another subcategory of stakeholders who were involved in the warehousing functions, which is critical to our supply chain here. And these ones had interest in developing the business case, making sure that the key performance indicators are developed and aligned with the national M&E framework, and then user needs identification. At regional level, we have 10 regions. We used to have 10 regions, now 16. So we noted that that is a key stakeholder group, because from central level, commodities are delivered to the regional level. And that's a big stage at which most of the information is captured. That leads to inventory flow to the service delivery point. So those were also grouped, and we looked at their user requirements, and identification of data requirements and system implementation champions at that level. Another category that we looked at, which had similar interest, was the service delivery points, the users themselves. And again, we looked at their requirements, their data use at their various environment, and then process optimizations at that level. My colleague Philip did mention that when we started the project, the users were defining their requirements. But also, in addition to that, our experts that were led by Philip himself were helping them to make sure that if they are already identified inefficiencies or systems that are duplicative, those are not carried through in the new system. Another group of key stakeholders that was also important for this project were the development partners, Global Fund, USAID, Gavi, UNFPA, UNICEF, and others, who are mainly looking at supporting the implementation of the project from the funding perspective, but also aligning the strategy of the project with the global initiatives, and ensuring that there is effective utilization of resource. So, in conclusion, the standard that was set in Ghana in terms of developing the Ghana Integrated Logistics Management Information System was to motivate data use at source, at each and every point where data was captured. This was important because the earlier systems were focusing on reporting, and therefore the users who were doing most of the data entry didn't see value in the systems, and sustainability became challenging. So for this, we had that paradigm shift whereby the data entrant themselves at their user level saw value in the data that they are entering into the system, hence data use at source. Over to you, Emile.
Excellent. Thank you so much to Phil and Dio. I think this is great insight into the work that's been happening in Ghana, but also the collaboration and the partnerships that you've been working on. We're already getting questions in the chat. I have quite a few questions of my own, but we're going to hold on to those for now. We have 2 more presentations for y'all before we transition to the Q&A period. So now we're going to leave West Africa for a bit and head on over to where Leah has been working in Indonesia. As I mentioned, she provides support to these projects across the world. But Leah, we're excited to hear what you can share with us about the health workforce.
Great. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Deo. Thanks, Phil. Thanks for getting us started so wonderfully today. Hi, everyone. My name is Leah McManus, and I'm the Indonesia project lead for the USAID-funded Human Resources for Health in 2030 program. I'm really pleased to be here with you all today to talk more about our work in Indonesia, which was honored to be a 2020 USAID Digital Development Award winner. Today, we will learn more about strengthening partnerships and applying the principles of digital development to create a robust digital ecosystem for health workforce data to ultimately optimize the health workforce. So overall, I think we can all agree that there really is no health without the health workforce. But oftentimes, the availability and use of quality data on the health workforce can be limited. And this is further complicated by the fact that the health workforce data really encompasses all information that is needed throughout their life cycle related to building, managing, and optimizing. Because of this, looking at how to strengthen partnerships between stakeholders and their information systems that touch these different parts of the life cycle is very important. So now let's look at the case of Indonesia and how and the work that we collaborated with the Ministry of Health on. So Indonesia is a very large and complex country. We're talking about a health system here that has to accommodate almost 300 million people who live across 17,000 islands. In an attempt to meet the health needs of the population, Indonesia has around 1.5 million health workers and around 100,000 hospitals, health centers, and clinics that are managed by a diverse array of stakeholders, from local government to national to private businesses. And like all countries, the COVID-19 situation is really stressing the health system. This is not new to anybody anymore. And with over 800,000 cases recorded since March. These are not small numbers. Thus, it makes sense that a diverse array of stakeholders are involved in the health workforce. Here you'll see just some highlighted partners that we picked that have some active role to play. And you'll see how this plethora of stakeholders is even more complex when those in red were added for COVID-19 response and their information systems. It's not only the stakeholders that make the situation complex, but the variety of information systems that each one of them sort of comes to the table with. This complex environment, like many countries, is facing challenges related to the health workforce and its data. These challenges are related to distribution, production, coordination among stakeholders, and issues with data are related to completeness, lacking interoperability and integration, and siloed analysis and use of data. However, though this is the case, Indonesia has a very strong policy environment to address these challenges. So to address these issues, and in light of the enabling policy environment, HRH 2030 and the MOH HRH Directorate applied the principles for digital development and strengthened partnerships to strengthen existing information systems, develop interoperability between these systems, and improve analytics and visualization for use. This is all really based on a foundation of governance and capacity building of stakeholders to ensure long-term sustainability, and really the principles really guided us throughout. So let's look at how these interventions contributed to an increased use of data to optimize the health workforce. All right, so as we noted before, Indonesia has many different information systems, yet data is often incomplete and inaccessible. Because of this, we focused first on understanding the current ecosystem and reusing and improving. We knew there was a lot there, we needed to find it, and we needed to learn how to build on it. So first, we applied the HRIS action framework to better understand the functionality and capacity of the current ecosystem. Based on this assessment, we targeted technology enhancements to the existing HRIS, such as building mechanisms for data quality verification and increasing the capacity of the system to exchange data between internal and external sources to improve completeness of data in the existing HRISs. Of course, while this data quality is important, if it cannot be accessed where needed, the decision-making process is really still impacted. So to address this, HRH 2030 leveraged open source systems to build an HRH data warehouse using DHIS2 so that stakeholders at all levels of the health system have access to aggregate multi-year data for their area. This warehouse includes data from the HRIS, as well as other important aggregate data needed by the national and local government. Quickly, to give you an example, the data warehouse is used by local government as the main source of aggregate health worker data for the public health facility profiles that are available online. And it was used to create some national level dashboards on key health indicators. Building on the strengthened information system, we moved towards collaborating with stakeholders for interoperability to really create this digital ecosystem. We started by designing with these stakeholders or users to define the common issues they needed data to respond to. We then worked collaboratively to standardize the data for exchange, and based on this, developed the technical interoperability between the systems to create a secure exchange of data. In Indonesia, we found the decision-making process. We found this decision-making process not only improved the availability of data, but also the partnerships, that were developed between stakeholders. We really think that creating interoperability served as a catalyst to build the governance needed to strengthen the relationships between stakeholders at all levels, which is really interesting. Sometimes we talk about strengthening governance and relationships first. Sometimes we talk, and in this case, starting with the discussion about interoperability to improve the availability and use of data really helped to build those relationships. So just to give you some examples of the results of this, this process was applied at the national level between the Ministry of Health and the Midwifery Association, and which has about 400,000 midwives that are members, and also between the Ministry of Health and regional level governments. This resulted in both common definitions on key data points, such as registration number and health professional category, as well as improved efficiency in regular government operations, such as improvements in timing between health worker licensing. So after strengthening these systems and building interoperability, we moved towards developing strong data analytics and visualization to support decision making, or designing for scale, and working to design for scale from the beginning. Before we dive into this, I want to note that a lot of the focus on building this digital ecosystem was not about strengthening the systems, but also training, coaching, and mentoring of the people using the systems to be data-driven. These investments in both systems and people not only support sustainability, but really allowed for fast action in COVID-19 response. At the beginning of the pandemic in Indonesia, the HRH Directorate was able to rapidly, and I'm talking within a week, develop HRH dashboards for the entire country at the regional level or national level, using the HRH data analytics platform that we helped them create, which include the HRIS, Data Warehouse, and Tableau. They use this platform to compare the HRH to the COVID-19 situation, as well as monitor provision of incentive payments and inform emergency response programs, such as the volunteer program. Because the HRH Directorate took the time to learn and increase their capacity, they had dedication to this, they were able to take ownership of the data and analysis and rapidly use this data for COVID-19 response. In addition, this ownership and capacity has led to an increased confidence in the health workforce data by local officials, which I think we all can agree is a common issue. And they will now be using the data analytics platform to plan for vaccination of HRH in the coming weeks. So though we had great partners and a great guide through the principles of digital development, developing this ecosystem did not come without challenges, and we learned a lot through this process we wanted to share. To begin, process over product. Emphasis should not be placed on the process. It should be placed on the process and not the product. Strengthening of information systems should be focused on not only solving problems today, but finding new problems to solve. Engaging the right stakeholders from the beginning is crucial. And finally, building capacity is not just about skills building, but confidence building. So if we have time, we have a quick poll. We just want to hear from you because we think this is an important topic right now. So maybe we can launch the poll and then we can talk about it after the responses after if we have time. Great, I see the poll is there. Yeah, so basically, what role do you see for HRIS or HRH data in planning distribution of the COVID-19 vaccine? There's a lot of different levels to this, and we're just curious to know more about how you'll use HRH data for informing supply chain management. So thank you, I'll stop there and we can talk about the poll after.
Great, thank you so much, Leah. I think that's really interesting. And I think that health workforce has always been at the top of people's minds, especially folks who are in this group, but especially, coming out of 2020 with so much emphasis on health workforce, even more so. So excellent. The poll will stay in the chat. Please participate. We're going to go through our final presentation right now before we get to our Q&A period. So I'm very excited to welcome Gladys Muhiri from the Catholic Relief Services. She's going to speak a little bit to you now, and then we'll come back for that final section. So Gladys, thank you so much for joining us. Once again, she's the Supply Chain Technical Advisor for Central Africa, coming from a pharmacy background and working on very complex public health issues. Gladys, are you with us?
Yes, thank
Excellent.
you, Emily, for the introduction. We had sorry for that noise. We're going to share our presentation, the end user perspective, as introduced by Emily. I'm the supply chain technical advisor for the Central Africa region. And I will be presenting on all the health programming that are currently in CRS region. Next, please. And currently, CRS is supporting the Ministry of Health for the implementation of some health program in Nigeria, Congo, Guinea, and Niger, while CRS is the principal recipient for malaria and sub-recipient for in Mali and Sierra Leone, and the principal recipient for the Global Fund to fight against TB. Mainly our role will be to support the Ministry of Health in health system strengthening for the health management information and LMIS information as well, and also intervene in malaria case management and prevention and vector control of malaria. Those are the main interventions we are currently supporting. The list is not exhaustive, but that's where we have some information system support. As already mentioned earlier by Phil, all the digital solutions that were developed with CRS were done according to the digital principle and were involving requiring stakeholders collaboration and user perspective, taking into consideration the ecosystem. And those are the few examples that I can share where CRS was involved, like the deployment of the LMIS and HMIS in Guinea, where we had a great collaboration with the PMI implementing partners in Guinea, where they were supporting certain districts and I was supporting other districts, and they were involved in the development of the technical component of the LMIS, where we were involved in capacity building. We were able to have the implementation of those solutions thanks to that great collaboration. In Benin as well, we had a great collaboration, and there is currently an ongoing digitalization process of health campaign, and one of the recent one was the seasonal malaria chemoprophylaxis and the ITN distribution. In Nigeria, we've been supporting since 2017 the ITN mass campaign distribution with good collaboration of Ministry of Health, NMEP, and service provider, specifically Red Rose in Nigeria. In Guinea, again, we are currently supporting the health community data collection process as well as SMC with the use of ComCare and DHS2 as well. All of those initiatives are done in collaboration with the Ministry of Health and supporting the Ministry of Health with the fund of Global Fund. There is currently an ongoing deployment of CRS ERP system with supply chain component. We'll be using that component for country program where we don't have the LMIS system in place. And all those were developed taking into consideration the digital principle. I wanted to just highlight those different solutions that were implemented. I was requested to share next, please. To share the benefit of digital solution to public health supply chain operation. We understand that I may take the whole day talking about the benefit of those solutions, but I try to highlight the main benefits that we've observed in the implementation. And as I mentioned earlier, I work at the regional level. We support the direct implementation of the country program are the one directly implementing those. And the information I'll be sharing are coming from the Nigeria, from Benin team, Guinea team, and I've been working with the our colleague in Waro and HQ to collect all those main outcomes that we can share. So what we understand that the first one will be access to data, and it will be feasible with those online platforms. We understand that in HMIS, for example, we have DHS2, which is currently being deployed in many countries, in Congo Brazzaville, in Guinea, the LMIS platform currently being deployed in Guinea for the country that we are supporting. And we understand that with those data availability, it's much more easier to really monitor the supply chain KPIs, like the order fulfillment rate, the stock out rate, which allow us to really improve the efficiency of our supply chain by ensuring the constant availability of commodities. With those data, it's also easier to track the short shelf life product, or to track commodities, or to track lot number in case of recall. Those data, those resource database are really helpful in those cases. It's also a great opportunity for stakeholders to have access to data and make informed decisions based on those information. So that's one of the main benefits we can talk about in terms of using a digital solution in public health context. Next. The second one, of course, is the health commodities availability. We have seen that with the implementation of LMIS, for example, in Guinea, since 2018, we were able to use the consumption data, which was not the case in the past. We used to use morbidity data or service data. We were not able to have consumption data for comparison, and came up with forecasts that are based on those information. So that was one of the major outcomes that we were able to benefit during the implementation. The other one is the improvement of the replenishment mechanism and the possibility of mitigating the stock out rate. Because I mentioned earlier, it's easier to monitor the stock out rate with those information. And another good example that we can share is an experience in Nigeria, where in the 2018, where we're trying to conduct a desk review for the evaluation of the discrepancy between the HMIS and LMIS data. It was 42%, but the following year, due to the improvement of data that are collected, the discrepancy was lower. An exercise was conducted to try to understand, which was later identified. And those are the real examples that are really showing the benefit of using the LMIS data. It's also the digitalization. We all agree that it provides more time allocated to data quality improvement, with monthly meeting organized to really check on the data quality instead of focusing on the data collection. We all know that it can be time consuming. We know the high turnover rate we have of service provider at a lower level. We know the issue we have with capacity building. All those things can be reduced by developing tools that are friendly user. Next. We had a good, with the availability of data, we can have tailored intervention. I can just name a few. I see that Emily, she's starting putting her camera on. I will name some few examples. It's, for example, during the LMIS HMIS data comparison, we had identified that the reporting of secondary and tertiary health facility were really low. And one of the solutions was to deploy and train staff on the use of Android devices for uploading information on DHS2. That had contributed to improve, but we wouldn't have been able to identify that weaknesses and without having those information available. And those are the example of some tailored intervention that were developed along the way. It was also possible to identify some proxy delivery and the implementation of that KPI in our service level agreement with the service provider. I will just name those few, and also to try to establish a pilot in order to really encourage the cross-check of the HMIS and LMIS data at a lower level. Next, please. A good example of one of the good use of the information was we were able to, in Nigeria, the team was able to really address the COVID-19 supply chain disruption and shortages of commodities by doing some redistribution thanks to the information that they had on their Navision. The screenshot that you see on the side is the type of information that we can have on Navision, which is the LMIS of Nigeria. Next, please. The fourth thing that we can say, and the last one in terms of the benefits of using the digital solution for public health, is the fact that we can improve accountability, either in our training, either in our distribution of commodity. On the slide, you can see that there is an example of the Benin experience, where on the map we can see some, it was in one commune, one small area where we can see some dots in blue, in green, yellow, and red, showing where the distribution of commodities were happening. All those elements are really improve the accountability of ITN and drug, and really reinforce the performance of field agents, supervisor during the distribution, and also contribute to send social behavior communication and to improve the efficiency of our health campaign. Those are the main examples that I can share in terms of benefit of using a health solution in public health. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Gladys. I'm sorry to appear in the corner of the screen. I know we only have a few minutes left before our session ends, and y'all will transition to the next session. And we've gotten some great questions, so I just want to get a few of them in there really quick. If our panelists are able to join us now, I think it's time for a great discussion. And while I could listen for hours to what everyone has to say, I'll invite you to try and keep your feedback brief, just so we can get through a number of questions before we transition. So today we've talked about some really diverse topics, even though they've all been around one core theme. And the questions that we have really reflect that. They're very unique. I want to actually start back with Phil. Philip, because we got some questions at the very beginning that were specifically about open source software and a bit about open source data. And to combine two of those questions, you know, someone was asking, when open source is not available, what are some of the hidden costs that you could anticipate, HR, other things, to build your own native software? And on the flip side, you know, thinking more about software as a service, you know, Teams or Excel, if you don't have access to open source, should you be thinking about using some of these privately developed systems instead? What are your thoughts on that?
Thanks, Emily, and quite a good question. And yes, there's instances when open source is not available, specifically in the sectors we work in. It's quite hard to find something that addresses everything. There is custom-made solutions, and HR is important. The bigger component in costing is hosting the software. and the hardware that's going to be able to manage that. So something that is really important to consider when you're building your native software is a hosting capability and the hardware that is going to manage that. The other component also is when you're building it, you need to consider scalability of that, and the human resources component comes into play, where the expertise for people who understand designing and always scaling the solution instead of building a one-off that may be retired in a few years. Preferably also when you're considering that, think about modern technologies. It's become much more easier now to develop solutions because Internet of Things, the availability of code everywhere can help you in terms of designing your solution. But then goes the bigger question, why don't we use software as a service? It depends on what you want to do. Teams for collaborative agenda, that's much more easier to do. But think about the work we do. It's normally hard to find a software available as a service provided to do supply chain functionality or deal with a health management information system. Is normally when we find that is not in line with our landscape. For example, you may end up getting SAP, you may end up getting Oracle, and then you identify yourself that it may not work perfectly well within your landscape. But of recent, the good news is like in Ghana, we are actually working using software as a service. We found that there's new companies that are designing software as a service for our part of the world. And so if you find something that works in that case, my recommendation is much more better that way because a number of things. You take away the cost of maintenance, you take the cost of scaling the solution, and you have you overcome the hidden costs that we normally don't see during adopting the open source solution. So a long answer, but yes, you can address the costs for native solutions. At the same time, if software as a service can address your industry needs, you can also go for that. But unfortunately, we don't have too many companies doing software for service for that. Thank you.
Excellent. No, I think it's a good answer to a good question. And it sounds like the more that software as a service becomes applicable within supply chain work, the more that can be utilized, and that building native solutions can be a good option, but you have to be ready for the costs when it comes to scale. So my next question is for Dio, and as we start to build these software solutions or think about how data, how technology, how all of these things can be utilized to help communities, you've spoken a lot about how collaborative partners need to be brought together to make sure that that's effective. And so I'm curious, you talked a lot about this creation of subgroups that you utilized in Ghana. Do you then bring these subgroups together? How do you help different types of groups work collaboratively to make sure that the solution is right before you even think about scale? And as Theo is answering, please note we've added a couple more polls in the chat box. Please feel free to answer them and participate. Theo, are you there?
Yes, Emily, I'm here, and I'm going to pass over that question to my colleague Adolf, who finally managed to join us since he was in charge of coordinating the collaborations. Adolf, over.
Hello? I hope you can hear me.
Yep.
Okay, all right. So to answer that question, so what we did was to ensure that for each region that we work in, we have a focus group that steer the affairs of the implementation from that particular region. So you have the region that handles everything that has to do with the implementation in that particular region. What we did then was that beyond that particular group in that particular region, they have access to the central level, a core team that is managing activities at the central level. Then the core group also tries to coordinate everything that has to do with the individual regions. Like Dio mentioned, we have 16 regions. So far, we've implemented to all the 16 regions. So you have this core group working in all the 16 regions. This core groups also have access to the LMIS or GhiLMIS implementation team, which is at the central level. Beyond that, we have a LMIS subcommittee that answers to the ministry. So they handle issues that has to do not so much with technicalities or to do with system implementation, but anything that has to do with policy implementation and all that. Beyond the LMIS sub committee, there is a steering committee that is overseeing the entire implementation of interventions within the Ghana supply chain. So yes, even though we have all these various subgroups, the subgroups are linked together, they work independently, but they have access to a group that is at a tier that is higher than them, and they try to provide solutions to them. And then the coordination has been so smooth, and so far we've not really had much of a problem. When issue comes, collectively we are able to try to address the issue, and then we move on from there. Over.
Excellent. I think that's really great insight into collaborative work, and it's exciting to hear that it's been going well. We have 2 minutes left, but I do want to send one last question. Leah or Gladys, feel free to jump in. You know, we've put these polls in the chat, and what we're really getting feedback on is that, you know, this data could be utilized in a lot of ways in Indonesia to help with health workforce. And in Gladys's question, she's saying, you know, when you've implemented data gathering systems around the world, you know, what feedback have you gotten? And a lot of people are saying there's more time dedicated to data quality improvement. We are in, you know, an unprecedented time, as people like to say. People are paying more and more attention to health. How can we leverage this to improve data, to use data, to bring data to the center of the conversation?
Yeah, I think just what I've seen over the past decade or so working in this area is that it used to be, oh, you have something, and now it's, okay, well, is the data, then it turned into the data quality, and then it moved into, well, is the data even being used for anything? So we are sort of maturing in our, not only in having information systems, but that they are actually having an impact on the health system. And with the fact that this pandemic has just uprooted the lives of so many people at all levels of their lives, it shows that it just renews the importance on making data-driven decisions by all stakeholders that have some sort of say in how we're building resilient health systems. So, I mean, I see that people, I feel like, you know, after Ebola, I think we started making headway in that way, and things have just sort of escalated from there in a good way. An unfortunate situation, but maybe a good outcome in the long run for that. Thank you.
Thank you. Gladys, anything you want to add in 30 seconds?
Thank you, Emily. I think the vote just confirmed what we've been seeing on the ground, that we have more time dedicated to data quality with the use of technology, and it's one of the major challenges we know that we have with our data. So on the long run, we may have more, it will help us have an efficient supply chain if we use accurate data. That's the comment I can share. Thanks you for facilitating.
Well, thank you so much for joining. Thank you to all of our panelists. Thank you to all of those who have joined in the audience. Please continue with the conference as it goes on. This session is recorded, and we look forward to you reaching out to either Chemonics or Catholic Relief Services for more information about these topics, for rewatching this session, and for continuing to participate in the conference. Thank you once again for joining us. It's been a pleasure to have this conversation with all of you today. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Ron.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.